Can.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to this our sixth webinar with Allistair McCaw. Huge privilege to have Allistair on this week's webinar. Allistair was one of our first podcast guests way back last year. He's given me loads of his time. If you want to check out the podcast, by the way, it's number 4. You can put it into iTunes or wherever you listen to, and it's in there. It's you get a lot of information on Allistair. But he's even given us some excerpts from his book that we've put into our practice journal, which was really generous of him. But more importantly, he has his own book, which you should check out. It makes a great Christmas gift. But there's a lot of great parts in it, and you can learn a lot. And yeah, it's really good. Allistair will tell us more about it. But for those that don't know Allistair, he's worked with some great players, both on and off the court. So he covers physical and mental mindset, preparation, everything there. So really great guy. You can learn a lot. And before we get started, if anybody's on Instagram, if they're not using their phone, please take some pictures, tag us, and we'll reshare them. But more importantly, let's move on to Allistair. Welcome, and I'm really looking forward to this, Allistair.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's good to be here. It's good to see you again, Fabio. So yeah, hope you're keeping warm.
We're not. I have the lucky woolly jumper on, so it's all about you now. Enough about me, Allistair. So I'll let you kick it off.
Thanks so much. Yeah. One thing, Fabio. How much time do we have? So I know not to go over.
Whatever your presentation takes, so 20, 30 minutes, and then a Q&A for the same amount of time. So we tend to do no more than an hour, unless there's loads of questions coming in and you're really enjoying it. So yeah, let's just see how it goes.
Perfect. All right. So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me for the Champion Minded presentation. It's probably going to be around about, as Fabio said, about 20, 25 minutes. And then of course, I want to leave enough time for questions as well. So let me see here. Are we getting a screen share here? What are you seeing there, Fabio?
I'm seeing your beautiful face.
You're too kind. All right. Are we getting that full screen? Yeah.
Yes, you're in business.
All right, awesome stuff. All right, so starting off, Champion Minded was my second book, I think. I wrote that especially for athletes who want to excel, not just in sports, but in life, which is so important. It's not only for athletes, parents can read this, coaches can read this. There's a lot of helpful things in there. And one of the main reasons why I wrote Champion Minded was because, first of all, I wasn't the most talented athlete when I was younger. However, I found that if I put the right attitude, effort, work ethic, all these controllables, if I maximize those, then I could make something of myself. And we never know how far we're going to go. That's the beauty of it, is like, Novak Djokovic, Serena, Roger, when they were younger, 10, 11, 12, they didn't know they were going to be at Wimbledon or US Open one day. So, it's so important to have that dream and vision. But another reason why I wrote Champion Minded was because when I was competing as a kid, when I was younger, I wanted practical reasons of how to deal with nerves, how to deal with cheating opponents, how to deal with pressure, for example. I didn't really want to learn how the left side of the brain thought or these things. I wanted practical information. That's why I wrote Champion Minded, very simple information on how to deal with the things that come across you every day. Now, what is Champion Minded? Is it about winning a trophy? No, it's about being a champion in life. It's about maximizing what you have, because at the end, you don't want to have regrets. Now, on the screen, you'll see that there's 8 words there, and those are the 8 principles or pillars, can you say, of Champion Minded. Act, because we know that behaviors produce outcomes. The way you live, right? The way you look, your appearance, how you present yourselves, and that covers body language as well, which we're going to get into. The way you think, which is of course your mindset. Your mindset can either set you up for success or it can set you up for failure. You get to choose. Mindset is like attitude. Every time you wake up in the morning, you get to choose what your attitude is going to be. Nobody else. The 5th one is the way you prepare, another controllable. Do you prepare like a champion, or do you prepare like a loser, if I can put it this way? Consistency is a massive thing in preparation. The average do it sometimes, the good do it most of the time, the great do it all of the time. Consistency is key. The 6th one is commitment. Commit to what you're going to do long after the feeling has worn off. Now we know, like, for example, at the beginning of the year, everybody likes to set New Year's resolutions. And by February the 1st, more than 60% of people no longer have New Year's resolutions. They've fallen by the side, right? Commitment is the key to success, all in or not. The seventh one is compete, the way you compete. And if there's one thing I've noticed with champion athletes, they compete all the time. They compete in practice. They compete daily. They are competitive animals. And the last one is the way you communicate, because communication is key. Now, communication is not just about talking. Communication is about effective listening, because the more you listen, the more you're going to learn, right? Now, do you listen to respond, or do you listen to hear? That's the difference, and to understand. That's what makes some of the best athletes I've worked with, is that they're great listeners. They absorb feedback. They ask for feedback, for example. Now, here's something that's actually in the front of my book about being mindset tough. And I'm going to read it to you. You're not born mindset tough. You choose to be. Getting mindset tough means enduring experiences in your life. From those experiences, champion-minded athletes and people develop grit. What is grit, you ask? It's the ability to overcome challenges and to endure hardship. It's about handling and overcoming failure. And it's about getting up one more time after being knocked down. Now, listen, if you want to become mental tough, right? Mental tough is a choice as well. It's about doing the difficult things. It's about doing the hard things. It's about embracing difficulty. Right now, 2020 COVID, it's been challenging for all of us, but you have a choice to how you're going to live your day, for example. Are you going to adapt, or are you going to keep complaining about the way things are? You get to choose. Second paragraph, a champion mindset is not only about being gifted or talented, it's about being prepared, focused, disciplined, and having a deep, unshakable belief in oneself. The reality is, some days you will feel great, and some days you will feel terrible. Some days you're inspired, and some days you can't even find the motivation to get out of bed. But here's what really matters, is that you have a vision and you believe in yourself, because there's no limit to what you can achieve. Your vision will drive you. Your job is to create a vision that makes you want to leap out of bed each morning and attack the day. Now, listen, you might see me as positive, motivating, inspiring, with all these things, okay? But I have also struggled, like you, some days to get out of bed. I've also struggled to motivate myself sometimes, right? Believe me, I've been lying in bed some mornings, not wanting to go out and run, or not wanting to start work, for example. That happens to me as well. But here's the thing. Because I have a vision, because I have a purpose, because people are relying on me, for example, and part of my big purpose is inspiring, that gets me out of bed in the morning, even on mornings where I didn't feel like it. You know what? I still get negative like anybody else. But here's the difference between positive and negative people. It's that positive people still get negative, but they're able to move on quicker from that negative thought. Just like an athlete. What is the difference between, what is one of the differences between the best athletes and the rest, is that they're able to move on to the next play, the next point, the next shot quicker than before. They don't carry that last point over to them. That's that double fault, or dumping that easy volley into the net, overhitting, for example, a short ball. They don't fester on that. They move on quicker. Tiger Woods was asked, what's the difference between you and these other players? Because it all comes down to marginal, in golf, 1 or 2 shots, right? And that can divide 10 players. It's simply said, it's the mindset, and it's my ability to forget the last shot, no matter how good it was or no matter how bad it was. So let me ask you, athletes out there, no matter what sport you're in, how quickly do you move on to the next shot, the next point? How quickly can you forget that last? If there's maybe one thing that you can work on, and I hope you have pen and paper, you're taking notes here, okay? Because you can't remember everything, it's impossible, is work on your ability to move on to the next point and forget the last. In fact, I call it FF, forget and focus. Forget the last point, the last ball, the last shot, the last throw, and focus on the next shot. That's what makes champion-minded athletes. Right, good. So 10 traits of a champion-minded athlete. Here we go. The number one is have a clear vision. And I just spoke about that in the slide before, is that you need to know where you're going. You need to have goals. You need to have a vision of where you want to be. All the great people in our history, be it Nelson Mandela, be it Mother Teresa, have all had a vision. Martin Luther King. Novak Djokovic had a vision. I'm sure you've seen some of those images when he was maybe 10 years of age and he was in the television studio and they were asking him what he wanted to be. And he wanted to be the #1 player in the world and he wanted to play at Wimbledon. That's a vision, right? All great athletes, all great performers have a vision. Let me ask you right now, do you know where you want to go? Do you see that vision on a daily basis, right? You've got to see it to believe it. It's got to start in here. You know, when I was a kid, I used to write things on pieces of paper and I used to stick them on my bedroom wall. I will be a champion one day. I would draw a picture of a podium with me standing with a trophy on it. All these small little things contributed to my vision of wanting to be a champion athlete one day. And you know what? I still write notes and I stick them up on the wall of what I want to achieve. I want to visualize that each day. Now, visualization is critical to your success because you've got to first see it in the mind before it can happen in reality, right? So have a clear vision. Now, one of the players, as Fabio maybe mentioned, I worked with for 4 years. I had the pleasure of working with Kevin between 2014 and 2018. So it was a really, really good 4 years, of course. When I started with him, I think he was ranked just outside the top 20, together with Neville Godwin, an amazing coach as well, who in fact, we played under 10 tennis together back in South Africa, and we ended up working with Kevin together 35 years later. That's the beauty of tennis. It can take you to so many places. But together with the team, with Kevin, with Neville and Kevin, and some great physios as well, we were able to get Kevin into a higher position. Of course, the goal was to be top 10 in the world, which he reached #5 in the world. He lost to Novak in a Wimbledon final, and he lost to Nadal in the US Open final. But of course, the big wins for him were against Roger Federer in the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. He came back from 2 sets to love down against the king of grass, Roger himself. For me, that was one of the most phenomenal wins. But Kevin had a vision. Kevin knew where he wanted to go, and he saw that every day. He would talk about it every day. You know, we'd be on practices, and, you know, he'd be already putting that image into his mind of where he wanted to go, and that's where it started. One of the hardest working players I've ever worked with, respectfully, I say this, and he knows this, one of the least talented players I've ever worked with. But that's what gets my full respect, and that's what Champion Minded is about, is how can you maximize what you have. For Kevin, for example, he had to do things 3, 4, 5 times more than I do with, for example, a Xavier Melissa or Bernard Tomic or Svetlana Kuznetsova. They got it a little bit easier, but Kevin had to be repetition, repetition, repetition. And there's no one more that I know that deserves what he's achieved in the game of tennis than Kevin himself. So, you know, it starts with a vision. Where do you want to be? Good. Number 2 is that you live like a champion. You know, so many times I come across athletes and I ask them, what do you want to do? What do you want to become? They'll say top 10 in the world or a professional. But then I look at their lifestyle and it doesn't match up to those goals, for example. Yes, you might be pitching up at practice and working hard. Yes, you might be putting in the extra 15, 20 minutes on working on your serve or working on your kick, whatever, because I know we have different sports here as well, not just tennis. So, you know, are you living like a champion? Are you hydrating every day properly? Are you getting the right amount of sleep? Are you taking care of your mindset? Maybe reading a page or 2 of a good book, for example, which is helping you with your mindset. Are you eating good food, nutritious food? Are you coming prepared to the court with snacks, with drinks, for example? All these small little things, these are the things that it takes to live like a champion. It's not enough just to train hard. It's not enough just to do the extra 20 minutes, for example. Your lifestyle has to be revolved around excellence if you want to become excellent, if you want to become that vision you have of being one of the best there is, or going to college, which is a fantastic route as well in sports, and getting a scholarship. That's incredible. But are you living like a champion? What are the choices that you're taking on a daily basis? Again, you get to choose, you get to own your journey, okay? There's nothing wrong with sometimes having a McDonald's or having something, but if that's becoming a habit, if that's becoming a weekly thing, then you're not living champion-minded. You're not living to exceed your goals. But don't get me wrong, it's good to treat yourself now and again, okay? You know, it's incredible how many small mistakes I see athletes make, even some of the best, right? Is that they don't hydrate enough during a match, for example, or they're not hydrating enough outside of the match. Your body is consistently burning up water. Just like you drive a car, you need to put water in there. You need to put gas in there. What's the quality of that? Are you going to put a cheap 87 lead gas into a Ferrari? No, of course not. You're going to buy the best gas, petrol there is, or diesel, whatever it is that you're driving into your car, right? How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a 1989 Fiat, or do you see yourself as a 2020 Ferrari? You get to choose the way you treat it, what you put in it, okay? Are you living like a champion? I really hope if you're an athlete right now, you're asking some of these questions. And I really hope you self-reflect and you take these things and you go to work on them. Here's a great quote I love, and it's from a basketball player. I'm just going to move the screen a little bit to the side. Is parties won't take me to where I want to go. Kevin Johnson. Now, parties just doesn't mean going to somebody's house and having a party or going out, for example. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with going to a party, but if you're competing the next day or you're practicing, whatever it is, know what time to leave. Self-discipline. Now, this is something thankfully I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was my vision as a younger athlete, is that I didn't hang out with the wrong crowd. I hung out with fellow athletes. I hung out with people who were going to the same place I wanted to. For example, guys like Brett Hayes, who became a national athlete with me in the sport of duathlon, for example. We competed in world champs together, but we made the choice already in school is that we weren't going to go the direction of the cool kids, okay, of going to the parties and trying to fit in, for example. Now, again, just like having a hamburger or something, there's nothing wrong with going to a party now and then, a birthday party, whatever it is. But be responsible. Know what time, when to leave. Be disciplined in leaving at that time that you can get enough sleep and wake up in the morning. Like Kevin Johnson says, parties won't take you to where you want to go, okay? You're on a different mission. I know if you're watching this right now, you're champion-minded, straight out, because otherwise you wouldn't have tuned into this. Okay. And it's being champion-minded is about choices. It's about the choices that you make and taking ownership of your journey. Excellent. Good. Next one. Win the day. One of my favorite quotes. I'm sure if you follow me on social media, you've seen this one before. What does it mean to win the day? Well, to win the big day, all right, maybe it's a tournament, maybe it's nationals, maybe it's state, whatever it could be, county, whatever, is that you've got to win today. To win the big day, you've got to win today, okay? Now, what does that mean? It's the small things in your preparation. It's your wake-up time, the quality of your breakfast, how you plan your day, your time management. I hope every single one of you write these things down. I hope you keep a journal, for example. I keep my journal right here, and I document, I structure my day of what I'm doing. Every single hour, I know what I'm doing. Meetings, appointments, my exercise, time for me to read. I document those. The earlier you can get started on that, the better. But each day I aim to win my day. At the end of the day, I self-reflect. I ask myself 3 questions. Allistair, what did I do well today? What could I have done better today? And who did I make better today? Because the last one, who did I make better today, is about my purpose. It's about my vision. It's about making other people better, because it's not just about me. Who else did I make better? That's so important to ask. But are you winning the day? What are your top 3 goals or priorities for the day? Are you ticking those boxes at the end of the day? Because that's how you win the big day out there in front. Your goal, your dream, your vision is that you win today. I hope when you put your head on the pillow at night that you say to yourself, I won the day. All right. I achieved what I needed to. My nutrition was good. My time management was good. I was coachable at practice today. I worked hard. I put in the extra work. I did my homework, whatever these things may be, the things you need to achieve on a daily basis, you tick those boxes. That means you won the day. The more consistent you get in winning the day, the better chance you have in winning the big day. All right. Our next one is number 3. You control the controllables. Now, what is a controllable? Well, let's just take tennis, because the majority of you are in the tennis industry here. Is what are controllables? This is something I always ask athletes, okay? Is what's controllable in your sport? And they'll say, my preparation, my attitude, my body language, my game plan, for example. Maybe you have more than 2 or 3 more than 2 or 3 game plans, A, B, and C, because maybe game plan A isn't working. Well, you can change to game plan B, for example, okay? But controlling the controllables in a game like tennis or badminton, for example, are on the things like effort, energy, attitude, You control what you eat. You control what you drink every changeover. You control what you think. What are the uncontrollables? A cheating opponent, in a way. The weather, the crowd, the public, the condition of the court, the condition of the facilities, for example. You can't control that. So here's my question. Where is your energy going? Is it going to your opponent's side? Is it going to the crowd? Where is your energy going? You get to control your energy. Now, one of the best there is in controlling the controllables is this guy. And I'm sure some of you that are watching this right now recognize this guy. Rafael Nadal says, I try to focus only on the things that I can control, things like my attitude, preparation, and effort. And I don't think there's any better example than someone who brings his best every time, his best effort every time. Now, what he understands, and this is one of the key differences between the champion-minded athletes and the rest, is that they know they can't perform to their best every time, but they're always willing to give their best effort. Now, I've seen Rafa, I've seen Roger, I've seen Serena play terrible and still win. That is the mark of a champion-minded athlete. How do you figure out getting through today? Yes, it's not the way you want to win. It's ugly. It's terrible. It's disgusting. You wouldn't want to watch this video, your own video again, if you saw this match. But this is what the champion athletes and players understand, is that I might not be playing the way I want to, but I'm going to find out how I can get through today to give me a better chance tomorrow. Now, if you look at a Grand Slam champion, they have to win 7 matches in a slam, right? They will tell you that they probably had at least 1 or 2 that weren't good. It's impossible to have 7 perfect matches, okay? Now, let me ask you a question. This is a question I ask players. Have a think about how many matches you've played. Maybe this year is a bad example, okay? But because of COVID, of course. How many matches you play in a year? A lot of competitive juniors would say 60, 70 matches per year, okay? Now, out of all those matches, how many of those did you play perfect? The best you've ever played? I mean, you just think to yourself, if I could play like this every time, it would be unbelievable. You know what the average is? It's around about 2 matches, 2 or 3 matches. In fact, I asked a Wimbledon champion, how many matches did you play well in that year you won Wimbledon? He said, maybe 1 or 2. And I said, how many did you play? He said, 75. So you're not going to play your perfect way every time. It's impossible. So how are you going to figure that out? How are you going to win on the days that you're not playing well? Okay? It's all about your attitude. It's all about your mindset. It's all about you practicing these things in your practices. Okay? You're not just going to become more positive. It's not just going to happen. If you don't practice your serve doesn't get better, right? If you don't practice your mindset doesn't get better. So what are you working on in your practices? Maybe a good goal is self-talk today. Maybe a good goal is I'm going to work on my body language today, together with your coach, right? But getting back, focus on the things that are controllable. Self-talk, body language, attitude, coachability, all these things. Nadal is probably one of the best examples of being in charge of the controllables. Number 4, you have rituals and routines. I know it sounds like something from a Harry Potter movie, right? But rituals and routines, and this is a great example. We all know Michael Phelps, 23-time gold medalist, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Anyway, he's the most winningest Olympic athlete of all time. And one of the things that, I spoke to Bob Bowman, Michael's longtime coach. In fact, he's on the Champion Minded podcast. That podcast is available on iTunes, Amazon Podcast, YouTube, AllistairMcCaw.com. So there's some great podcasts there for you on that one, the Champion Minded podcast. But his coach was talking about Michael's routines and rituals. He's had the same warm-up since he was 11 years old. Yes, it's been tweaked a little bit. But one of the things I do when I work with athletes is make sure that they have set routines and rituals. Okay? What does your competition day look like? What does an hour look like before you compete? All these things that mentally get you ready, that help with anxiety, that help with the nerves, that put you in the best frame of mind. I can't tell you how many athletes I've seen well prepared, they've practiced hard, they've had a great off season, and then they mess it up on the day because they're just doing something that they're not used to doing, or eating something that they haven't eaten before, which is crazy, or putting on a new pair of shoes that haven't been broken in. These small little mistakes. But do you have set routines and rituals? Now, let me give an example of Michael's race day, what his routines and rituals were, for example. And like I said, he had a similar warm-up to when he was 11 years old, okay? So 3.5 hours before Michael competes, that's when he sits down for his pre-race meal, which is usually breakfast with eggs, oatmeal, 4 energy shakes. I don't know if I'd recommend 4 energy shakes, but I mean, his appetite was massive, they say. When I spoke to Bob, his coach, he said his food bill was like enormous every single month. The first of the 6,000 calories he would consume in the next 16 hours. That is a lot of calories, let me tell you. 2 hours before the race, he begins his normal stretching routine, starting with arms and his back, then working down to his ankles, where they'd be so flexible that they could bend to 90 degrees. I mean, if you ever saw his feet, they were like flippers. The amount of flexion that he had on them, the dorsiflexion, the plantar flexion was insane. It was just like that. A human fish. An hour and a half before he competes, he does his first lap warm up. He does 800 meters of mixed styles. Gosh, I would be dead after 800 meters. Followed by 600 meters of kicking, 400 meters pulling a buoy between his legs, 200 meters of stroke drills, and a series of sprints to elevate his heart rate, which usually took 45 minutes. His warm up was 45 minutes of those intense exercises. Kevin Anderson as well, his warm-up is 45 minutes before he practices, okay? So, you know, these are the small little details. 45 minutes before the race, he exits the pool and starts putting on his bodysuit. And because it's so tight, it requires 20 minutes to put on that bodysuit, okay? So you see how he's formulated his time before he gets in the pool. 25 minutes before the race, he puts headphones on to listen to his favorite music, which I believe was Eminem when he used to compete. And then 5 minutes before, they're called to the waiting room and to the blocks. And then his routine when he got to the blocks, he always stood to the left-hand side of the blocks. He had the warm-up, the flapping arms, for example. And this is what put him in the frame of mind to be a champion. So what am I saying? Do you have a race day or competition day routine? Do you have a set breakfast that you have? I never let my athletes go to a hotel and eat different food. We'd have to prepare the food or have the same, travel with the same food, for example, because you have, you know, you train so many years for this event and you eat something wrong the night before the day of the race, it's gone. That's just crazy. So preparation, it's about the small details. It's about having rituals and routines. My suggestion is, if you don't have, put pen to paper and say, this is what my race day will look like, or this is what my competition day will look like, especially an hour before. What does an hour before look like? What puts you in the best frame of mind to compete? Listening to music, or some people don't like any noise at all. Reading, being around other people, but put yourself in the best frame of mind to how you compete, for example. Number 5 is that you have empowering self-talk and body language, another controllable, another trait of the champion-minded. Now, just before we came on here, I was talking with Fabio, and we're talking about confidence. And where does confidence come from? Well, for me, it comes from 3 things. Ready? Write this down. It comes from your preparation, of course. You've got to be prepared. You got to put in the work. Number 2, it comes from your self-talk, what you're saying to yourself. Again, I've seen very well prepared athletes talk themselves out of it, or look at their opponent and think, oh my goodness, look how good she looks, or look how good he looks, or how fit they look, right? And the third thing is momentum. Momentum in your everyday practices, momentum in your consistency, momentum in your competition, etc. That is what builds self-confidence. I'll say it again. Preparation plus self-talk plus momentum equals confidence. Your self-talk is what you're saying to yourself. Now, how do you become a better self-talker? How do you become more positive? Here's the very first step. Catch yourself being negative. Catch yourself in the act being negative or having a negative thought and say, stop. I'm going to change that to something positive. That is the very first act in becoming a more positive person. And I know if you're listening to this today, you want to be more positive. You want to be more champion-minded. That's why you're listening to this right now. And body language. You know, your body communicates 80% of what's not being said. Your opponent can read your body language, what you're thinking. Now think about this. If you play tennis, badminton, whatever it is, whatever sport, and you see that your opponent has poor body language, what does it do to you? It gives you energy, right? Well, here's a news flash. When you've got poor body language, it gives your opponent energy. And they're thinking, I've got her, or I've got him now. Don't give that away. Walk tall. I know sometimes it's difficult. You're disappointed in the way you're competing, but walk tall and show that you mean business, that you're professional, that you're positive, that you're having positive thoughts. Now, Roger Federer. Now, we had Nadal. Now, for the Federer fans, I'm a very positive thinker, even when things aren't going well. I think that's what gives me the edge. Now, again, I've seen Roger play some terrible matches sometimes, but come out the victor because he was able to stay positive even though he knew he wasn't playing well. Okay? So a mindset, a great positive attitude will give you the edge. Good. Building confidence is very much the same as building a brick wall. When you take the time to recognize all the small wins you make on a daily basis, you keep adding bricks to your wall of confidence. So the little things that you're doing each day, the winning the day moments, getting to practice early, being prepared well, putting in the extra 20 minutes of work out, those are bricks. Those are bricks of your confidence wall. How do you knock bricks down? Negative self-talk, negative body language, not being coachable. These things, that's how you take bricks away from your confidence wall. So let me ask you, how tall is your wall? How high is your wall? Are you adding bricks there? Recognize the small little things you do on a daily basis. Here's an exercise for you. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you thought you did well today. It can be anything. Write down at the end of each day, starting from today, starting from tonight, these are the 3 things I did well today. It can be anything, absolutely anything. All right? Write those down. That's how you build confidence. You recognize the things you're doing well. Number 6, you surround yourself with the right people. Now, if there's one bit of advice I'd give to young people out there, it's choose the people that you hang around with carefully, because they're going to take you where you want to go, right? There's a few things that influence your future. The environment that you're in, the things you watch, you listen, you follow on social media, for example, are those positive? Are those uplifting? Okay? And the people that you surround yourself with. Because here's the thing, as Jim Rohn says, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The people you spend the most time with shape who you are. Now, as I take a sip of water, think about the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Are they challenging you to be better? Are they taking you to where you want to go? Are they like-minded people? Are they champion-minded people? All right, hydrating, performance. Number 7, when you're champion-minded, you're always willing to do the extra work. And here's the thing. When you're champion-minded, you don't have to be asked to do the extra work. Whose journey is it? Is it your coach's journey? No. Is it your parents' journey? No. Whose journey is it? It's your journey. You have to take charge of that journey. You're the one that wants to do the extra work. You're the one that wants to be there early. You're the one that wants to stay there later. Telling your parents, if you get dropped off, drop me off there early, pick me up there later, because I want to become better. Doing enough is not enough to be great. Doing enough is not enough to be excellent. You've got to be willing to do the extra work. I've seen this in multiple athletes. If Kevin only did enough, he would not be a top 10 player in the world. It's impossible, or anybody else for that matter. You know, you see the brilliance of Roger Federer and Nadal, but what you don't see them, and because I've spent off seasons in Dubai and seen Roger, how he practices, and being on the court next to him with Svetlana Kuznetsova, is that they do the extra work that you don't think they do. You just think, oh, this guy's just amazing. You know, like for example, our next one, Cristiano Ronaldo. There's no excuse to be ever outworked. Why is he arguably the best player in the world? And you can argue with Messi as well. That's apples and pears. Or that's like the GOAT debate between Novak, Roger, and Nadal. You know, it's so many different equations there. You can have your opinion, but they're willing to do the extra work. Why is Ronaldo the best free kick taker in the world? Because he practices it more than anybody. Because he's out on the field when it's raining and his teammates are already inside in the nice warm facility. He's outside practicing his free kicks. He's outside doing step running, for example. He's in his gym. He's even got a gym in his own home. His life is created around excellence. That's why he's the best. You see the brilliance of him on TV doing a bicycle kick or doing something crazy, and you think, wow, that's just talent. No, it's not just talent. Yes, you need a little bit, of course. That's the extra hours he's put in when nobody's watching, when it's dark, for example. His life, he's designed his life around excellence. That's why he's the best, not because he was just born talented, for example. Number 8, you're coachable and you accept feedback well, right? You know what gets in the way of being coachable and accepting feedback well? Ego. Is that I know it all, or who's this person to be telling me what to do, for example? Here's the thing. Some of the best coaches in the world didn't even play your sport. Okay. You know, on my podcast tomorrow, I have Valerie Condosfield, who's probably one of the most successful college gymnastic coaches ever. All right. She was for 36 years at UCLA. I think they won 7 national titles. She trained numerous Olympic athletes like Madison Koshin, amongst others. And she never did gymnastics in her life. Right. She came from a ballet background. So, you know, it doesn't matter what your coach has achieved or not. Are you receiving that feedback? Are you asking for feedback? That's what champions do as well. They don't just wait for it. They want to be taught. Steph Curry of the Warriors would say to his coach, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I need to know. That's how I'm going to get better. Are you doing that with your coaches, for example? Gino Auriemma, one of the best basketball coaches. Again, if you aren't willing to be criticized, you aren't willing to get better. It's incredible how many of us don't want to get feedback, or we ask for feedback until we get feedback and then we don't really like it because it's not something we want to hear. So if you want to get better, you have to learn how to deal with feedback and put it to good use. Ask questions. The best athletes ask more questions. Number 9, you see adversity and challenges as a way to build grit and resilience. That is what the toughest athletes have out there, is that they're willing to dig deeper. They're willing to go longer. It's hot, it's windy, and you're willing to stay out there and say to yourself, these are the conditions that suit me best because I've prepared in these, right? When I was training to be a professional triathlete and duathlete, I would go out and ride in the rain. I would go out and ride in the cold. I would go out and ride and run when it was 35 degrees Celsius, for example, because here's why. What if World Championships Day, the day, was raining or cold or extremely hot? What would I be thinking? Uh-oh, I didn't train for that. I didn't prepare for that. So I put myself in so many different scenarios to build grit and resilience, to put myself in tough situations. I would love it when I'd hear my opponents complain about the weather, complain about this, that, the court, all this, the facilities. Great. That's an even better opportunity for me to succeed. All right. While they're busy complaining and using their energy there, I'm going to put that into something constructive. Again, control the controllables. Excellent. Some people who've gone through adversity. Bethany Hamilton here, for example, a champion surfer, world championship surfer, lost her arm in a shark attack. She was back on the board 3 weeks later. Now that's what I call grit and resilience. LeBron James. Well, they were brought up in poverty, for example. They were moved house 20 times. They lived on food stamps, for example. That's what gave him the determination and the grit and resilience to become the athlete and the leader that he is today. They've come through difficulty, right? And they've put that to great use. Vicki Williamson. If there's one podcast you have to listen to on the Champion Minded podcast, it's this one. I think she's on episode 80, maybe 95, I think it is, on the Champion Minded podcast. Took up cycling at the age of 15. At 17, she was in the World Championship Junior Track Cyclist Champs, won a bronze medal. In 2018 or 2017, she had a horrific accident. She was hit on the track, indoor track cycling. Listen to this. She broke her neck, she broke her back, and had multiple injuries to her hips, etc. Neck broken, back broken. She tried to get back to cycling again because it was her love after 9 months of rehabilitation, 9 months of being in hospital, learned how to walk again, got back to cycling, got back to a decent level, the national team, the Great Britain. But here's the thing, because of her injuries, she couldn't continue cycling. And that's pretty sad, right? But what does she do? Does she pack it up? Heck no. She's now competing for the 2022 Winter Olympics in bobsleigh. That's a champion. She still wants to fulfill her vision. She still wants to become a champion. Now she's going to be competing in the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. Hopefully if it goes ahead. So champion minded, grit and determination. Remember to check that out on the Champion Minded podcast. And number 10, our final one, you take full ownership of your journey. It's your journey, not your parents, not your coaches. You get to decide how your journey is going to be. Have no regrets at the end of the day. Compete hard, practice hard, be coachable. All these things, you take ownership of your journey. Get to practice earlier. Put in the extra work. Self-talk. This is what it means to be champion-minded. So there's a quick summary for you. I'll let you go through that of the 10 traits of what it means to be champion-minded, for example. Good, or maybe take a screenshot of that or on your phone, for example. Good, we're almost there, and then we're gonna have some questions. I see Fabio coming in there. I love this quote. It's the one thing you can control. You're responsible for how people remember you or don't. And we all remember Kobe as probably one of the greatest athletes and leaders of our time. Mental toughness. Everybody has a perception of mental toughness is. I get asked it as well. What is mental toughness to you? And you can get 50 different answers if you ask 50 different people. To me, it's nothing more than having the discipline to do what's hard. Just keep it simple. It's the discipline to do what's hard. It's the discipline to do things that other people don't feel like doing. It doesn't matter if you're in sports, you're in business, whatever it may be. Success comes down to doing the things that other people don't like to do. Success comes down to people to doing the things that people don't feel like doing. Feel, right? Let me tell you, there's a lot of days where I haven't felt like doing much. But then I see what my goals and my vision are. It puts me into action. I'm sure you've seen this one before. 10 things that require zero talent. Being on time, work ethic, effort, energy, body language, passion, doing extra, being prepared, being coachable, and attitude. And I think we've pretty much covered those 10 things in this webinar. Good. So something that I'm offering as well, you have the opportunity now to be mentored by me. I work with specific athletes, not just professional athletes. I work with college, I work with junior players, for example. But if you're interested in mentorship or in consulting on the mindset and performance, those are my details. Contact me at info@allistairmccaw.com, and we'll gladly give you the packages and the rates and how it works, for example. There's some of my contact points on social media if you want to follow. I like to put out positive stuff. I like to put out helpful stuff on the mindset, on leadership, on being a better team player, all these things. So, I have this one thing about social media. Keep it hip. HIP. What does that stand for? Helpful, inspiring, and positive. And I know, Fabio, I'm going to send it back to you because you keep your stuff. And that's why I follow you at Functional Tennis. And for a matter of fact, why the only people I follow on social media are helpful, inspiring, and positive. So thanks so much. Let me take the screen share off, and then hopefully we have some questions.
Allistair, that was amazing. I'm super pumped after that. I always am after reading your stuff or listening to your podcasts or so. I've heard this stuff before from you, but we all need a reminder every now and again. Like, you forget little things. And one of the questions I want to ask you, I'll ask you in a sec, I better not forget now, is about that being reminded. But before I get onto that, you made two great points, by the way. And today I recorded a podcast with Robin Soderling, and we all know who Robin Soderling was. Top 4 player, beating Nadal at the French Open, multiple Grand Slam finalist. We said two things that were very closely related to you that you said. He goes, first of all, he left nothing to chance. Nothing. He says he ticked all his dots and his I's and all that sort of stuff. There was nothing left to chance. He controlled everything. And that was part of his success. But the second thing he said was that the difference from him being like a top 30 player and a top 5 player was when he realized he did not have to play good every day. He learned how to win, not playing great. And he goes, his game, he was no better top 30 or from top 30 to 5. His game was the exact same, but he mentally learned to adapt and deal with and realize that he was not going to be able to play great every day. And he says for him, that was massive. So you mentioned it right off the bat. And it was so funny today that I was speaking to him about it, which we'll have a podcast out in a few weeks. But yeah, really great. So Good,
Yeah.
some good points there.
I mean, you're spot on, and I'm glad you brought up that point again, because it's impossible to play the way you want every time. It is impossible. If a Wimbledon champion tells me that out of 75 matches, he only played 2 the way he wanted to, what does that tell you? So how those other 73 matches, did he play bad? No. He maybe didn't play the way that he wanted to or compared to his greatest performance, but that's what the champions do. Just like you said about Robin there, is that they find a way, they understand that they're not going to play their best all the time. And like you said, you don't have to play your best all the time to succeed. It's finding a way, because you can play an opponent and they can have a game style that's tough for you. You know, there's those, they might be ranked way lower than you, or they're not as good as you, but they have this style or this game plan that derails you a little bit, or is difficult for you to figure out. That doesn't mean you're playing bad, because you're not playing the way you want to, right? So it's figuring all this out. That's the beauty of this game, is figuring it out.
Yeah, before we get on to the viewers' questions, your whole thing about, you said when you were training as a triathlete in the rain and, you know, building that resilience, that reminds you a bit of the Irish golfers who, you know, we play in Ireland, it's windy here, it's wet. And let's say Ireland tennis compared to golf, their golfers are world champion golfers. We don't have that in tennis. But I think the resilience they've built on the golf course, where they've no choice, they have to spend 5 hours in the pouring rain, wind, ball going all over the place. When it gets tough in the Masters, or be it any pro tournament, and most of the pros from your part of the world, Miami, are giving out about the weather, the Irish are like this, and the English as well, this is great, like they thrive. So that just happens because of the environment, but it 100% know what you mean there, and it makes a lot of sense. Last question before I promise I move on to the viewer's question. I mentioned to you today that I talk about, I need reminders every now and again. You've worked with the greats. Do they need reminders, or it's just something they do they've never been told about?
Yeah, of course they need reminders. I mean, that's what coaching is all about, is that you're a support system. Working with professional athletes who are already established. Kevin, for example, he's in his 30s, he's an adult. He knows what he needs to do, but sometimes, there has to be reminders of things. But that's why we're there. We're not there to tell them what to do. We're there to remind them of maybe something you see that they forgot or missed, and just say, fill that in, for example. So yeah, absolutely. I've always believed that you can never over communicate enough. It's something when I work in teams and corporates, etc., is that you can never over communicate a message enough. Rather have over communication than under communication.
Okay, great. And what about coach? Like, you talk about surrounding yourself with people, but how important is it to surround yourself with people who are willing to say you're doing something wrong? Is there a lot of yes people out there?
Absolutely, especially in the professional game, not just in tennis, but in other sports as well. A lot of people that just like the idea of the lifestyle, being on tour, working with a player, maybe a little bit of ego involved as well, where they become yes people, and you can see the player is the one that loses at the end of the day, because that coach is not saying, hey, that's not how we do things, or if you want to be a champion, that's not how you behave, for example. And you need those people. You need those people in your life. Of course, there's the proper way to bring that message across. I know there's a lot of coaches on this webinar right now. Is about your approach of how you bring these things across. It's not the message that gets you in trouble. It's the tone. It's usually the tone. Anybody who's married or in a relationship, that the tone of voice can get you in trouble.
Yes, I've been told. It's how you say it. It's how you say it. Yeah. So we're going to ask. I'm just running a poll there for some people. We'll see if they're coaches, parents, academy owners, or players. We get a good mix. A lot of coaches on here, which is great, about 50%. So I have a question from an anonymous attendee. Could you talk a little bit about visualization? They're not a tennis player, but they just want to help visualizing tricks that have to be potential to hurt them. So how do they beat the fear?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we look at an example of Michael Phelps, for example, he used to visualize every day. So he used to purposefully put time aside to visualize. And of course, he used to visualize his race as well, the day of the race. So that was also part of his preparation. But it's interesting that Michael used to visualize his race from 3 angles. He visualized himself having the perfect race. He visualized himself watching the race as a spectator. And he visualized, listen to this, of the things that could go wrong. Because it's very easy for us to visualize the perfect race, the perfect game match, for example. But when do we need what do we need visualization for the most? Is that when things go wrong, how do we visualize ourselves dealing with that problem? Now, snowboarding, for example, fast sport, lots of agility, cutting angles, for example, is how do you see yourself if you do lose your balance? How do you see yourself if you do have a fall? Do you get back up straight away and go for it again, or do you give up, for example? You know, one of the things, and I spoke about the gymnastics coach who I will have on my podcast tomorrow, she said that, you know, no matter, even if one of her gymnasts fell off the beam or made a mistake, they had to get back on straight away. There was no sulking, giving up, didn't go my way, I'm so unlucky, I've practiced this and it's always gone well in practice, you know, those hard luck stories. So how do you visualize yourself if things go wrong? So my recommendation to you would be 3 angles of visualization. And you know what? Even if you're only beginning, let's just say you did 2 minutes a day. Perfect. You're on the road. Visualize your perfect performance. Visualize maybe like Michael does, watching yourself from the outside, what you look like. And number 3, visualizing some things that could go wrong, for example.
Great. The whole visualization thing of what could go wrong is really important, because sometimes you can act that out as well. And I'm not sure if you saw the Formula One last weekend, the big crash where Grosjean had a crash. Yeah. And like stuff like they acted what they have procedures in place where they do those emergency exits. They train for them. They make sure they can do them in 10, 15, 20 seconds. So they may be visualizing it, but they're also planning and going through those steps, which I think is part of it also. No different.
Well, I mean, it's preparation for the unexpected. You know, Michael Phelps, for example, Bob tells of a story where he stood on Michael's goggles in practice once on purpose, and Michael had to swim with them, and he could hardly see. He couldn't see anything in the pool. And in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, when Michael was going for his 8th gold medal, what happened is that he dived into the pool and water went into his goggles. He swam the race blind. He could not see. There was water in his goggles. And he won the race by, I think, 1/10th of a second or something ridiculous. But he was able to swim that race blind because he was able to count the number of strokes it took for him to touch the wall, and the number of strokes it took for him to come back. And you know, that's what I talk about, preparation of the unexpected. The champions do those little extra things.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you for that. We have a question here from Daria Zimi. How to improve your concentration in the game and mentally ignore everything around you except the game? So how do you just focus on the game?
Well, you know, where do you know, if you don't practice your serve, it doesn't get better. If you don't practice your volley, it doesn't get better. So you have to practice your focus in practice time, during practice time. So maybe that can be your key mental goal for the next few weeks, is focus of, you know, being conscious and being aware of that you want to focus and not be distracted by what's going on outside the court, or being distracted by your opponent, or distracted by a bad line call, sorry. So, you know, maybe it's a good thing you even write focus on your grip, on your racket. I sometimes give mantras or keywords, or have an athlete come up with a keyword like energy or move your feet or focus, and they write it on the grip of their racket, because when you see it, you start to think about more of it again. So, you know, it's being conscious about it. Don't take on too much. You know, if you're just working on your self-talk today in practice, just work on self-talk. Don't try and work on 3-4 things. If you're working on your focus, work on your focus, right? You'll find that those things like focus, self-talk, body language, they all start to interlink to a better performance. You know, they all like start to, you know, effort comes from a good energy. Now, or should I say that effort comes from a good attitude. If you have a good attitude, you'll probably 99.9% of the time give a good effort. So
yeah, it's all attitude. And the keywords are really interesting, because in our functional tennis practice journal, where we have excerpts from some of your books, some of your writings, a handful in there, we give cue words and we encourage players to put them on the racket, be it, as you say, focus, energy, positive, bend the knees, could be anything. You can write your own. So really important. Sometimes you just need one reminder, that's all, not too many. Don't sticker the whole racket up or don't write them all over your hand, but it's really important. But yeah, just a question we had emailed in, Allistair, was how do the top players that you've worked with handle nerves in big match occasions? Because I can see even for me or for other players, maybe we're playing our local club tournament, we still suffer nerves because we're playing, maybe the local top pro is down and we're playing them first round and we're going to be nervous. So what tools can we use to help?
Yeah, here's the good news is that everybody gets nervous. Even Roger Federer and Nadal, I've seen them in the locker rooms before going out to play. They're nervous. You know, I remember one time David Ferrer changed his headband about 6 times in a matter of 10 minutes. And those are just nerves, you know, like putting it on and off and on and off. Rafa, we know, you know, sometimes you look at Rafa and, you know, those rituals and stuff, those are all things that help him to control his nerves. So when you have rituals and routines in place, it helps you control those nerves or anxiety a little bit more. So for example, having a routine of what you do before you go on the court or before you go compete, for example, is having a set routine of I listen to music, then I have a snack, then I change, I check my rackets 10 minutes before I speak to my coach. You have like a set routine, and that helps you be in a process of doing something that you're not sitting thinking about it all the time, for example. But here's the thing, everybody gets nerves. And I think the way you see nerves is the most important thing, as something that's helping you, not hindering you. You know, if you don't feel nervous, be worried, because then you're doing something that doesn't really matter that much to you. I always knew the day I'd stop competing professionally was the day I stood on a world championship line, which I raced in 5 world championships, and I didn't feel any nerves. Then I knew maybe it's time to finish because this doesn't do anything for me anymore. So nerves are good. See nerves as a positive adrenaline. Know that everybody gets nervous, even the best athletes in the world.
Yeah, no, you're true. Even I got nervous before this podcast speaking to you. You know, like these things mean a lot to me. And yeah,
Hey,
I was more nervous. Will Allistair show up?
No. I still get nervous going up to speak on stage, and I still get nervous with things. So, which is good, because then I want to do well. So it means something to me.
It's good energy. It's good energy. I'm going to end this on last question. We have just a few questions come in here, more or less the same thing. And it's either kids are restricted by their country not being good tennis players, or during COVID where they can't travel. But how do you get a young under 12, under 14 player to think beyond their club level, think bigger during these tough times now, or maybe due to the country isn't a tennis country?
Listen, I get it. I mean, each country has different sports that they favor, for example. And, you know, I was brought up in Northern Ireland as well, and then in South Africa, which was obviously lots of sports in South Africa. But, you know, it's maximize what you have there at the moment. Yes, once you've got to a level where you're outgrowing your environment in a way, you're becoming the best there is there, and you see that there's not progress, then yes, especially in a sport like tennis, you would have to move to maybe a warmer climate where, you know, you're competing and practicing with the best every day, be it in Spain or be it in Florida, for example, wherever it may be. In those countries where there's better tennis, there's a better environment. But first of all, you have to, you know, get to a certain level as well. But, you know, talking about this year, for example, we're all in the same boat. It's been tough for everybody, professional players included. They don't even know what's going on with Australia at the moment. We still don't know if there's any dates. So, you know, we're all in the same boat. And it's about you adapting to the situation, doing what you can today, setting yourself many goals, still do your physical, go out for a run, hit against the wall, you know, volley against the wall. There's so many things you can do. If you're hungry enough and you're passionate enough and you want it badly enough, it doesn't matter what the weather is outside or what the situation is, you know, but right now it is what it is, and you've got to adapt and do your best.
Allistair, that is fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people. Hopefully they wrote the notes down. They took down their their 10 tips. I did. I told you need that reminder. I took them down and plenty got from that. So that's enough motivation to get me through the next day. No,
Yeah, and
the
I just want to say out there as well, I have your journal as well, Fabio. So anybody who's out there who needs a good journal that keeps you, keeps you motivated, tracking your progress is something that's very important that I do every single day. Even though I'm not competing anymore, I'm still in the performance industry and what I do in my job. You've got a fantastic journal. It's some nice quotes in there. It's well structured. So I highly recommend anybody that hasn't got Fabio's functional tennis journal. It's a really good book. I have one myself.
Thank you. And yeah, also that's it. So we'll send on, to be recording this going live. People want to watch it. It's the recording, we'll have a recording of it, which they can rewatch, take some notes. They can contact you, your information. We'll email over the information for you. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody. And I'll see you back for the next one. I don't know what the next webinar is, but it'll be back in 2 to 3 weeks and we'll be back again. So thanks a lot, everybody, and have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world. Bye.
Thanks so much. Stay champion minded.